Hello, welcome everybody to Her Legacy. It has been a while. We've missed you, but here we are, and I am so pleased to have as a co-host today my very, very good friend and a board member in the Zonta Club of Makati and Environs, the one, the only, the wonderful Rose Fausto. Hi, Rose. How are you?
Hi, Joanne. It's really nice to be back here on the podcast entitled Her LegaZ. And
Yes.
so excited because we have such a wonderful guest. So let me introduce her. She's a well-known media personality, writer, and speaker, recognized for her work in the fashion and lifestyle industry. So you guys knew each other from your modeling days and all. So our guest, she started her career as a model, but gained prominence through her editorial roles, particularly that of being the editor-in-chief of Cosmopolitan Philippines. So raise your hand if you used to subscribe because I used to Cosmo Philippines.
Oh, absolutely.
So our guest has worked with various publications and media platforms, making her an influential voice in women's empowerment, personal development, and lifestyle topics. Galing talaga nito ating guest ngayon. She is known for advocating women's empowerment, self-confidence, career growth, using her platform to inspire women to take control of their lives, particularly in their career, finances, and self-expression. So she continues to share her insights in her podcast entitled You Can Do This. So ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Myrza Sison.
Hey,
Hi.
wonderful to have you, Mirza.
I'm so honored to be your guest here on LegaZ with my modeling idol, Joanne. I
Hardly.
remember one of the reasons why I wanted to be a model when I was a computer programmer. Joanne was called the Brooke Shields of the Philippines.
Oh, good. Okay, now we've dated ourselves. Yes, but I have to say that Mirza has always been known to be the model that had beauty and brains.
Oh
She was
my
always
God.
very articulate, has written so many articles, and very clearly early on transcended the role of model and became really a sounding board, a media mogul of sorts. And it's delightful to see that she has continued the journey by empowering other women through her discussions and her talks on self empowerment.
Oh,
That's why
thank you
I'm
for
very,
that.
very excited to have Mirza on our show today. And we're going to talk about something that is not yet so popular in the Philippine scenario. So, I just heard about this term late last year, DINK, dual income, no kids. So it refers to couples who both have jobs and earn income but choose not to have kids. So, Mirza, please
Yes.
tell us. You yourself, you are a DINK. So maybe we can start with your personal journey.
Sure. Just to maybe clarify, the term DINK has been in existence since the 90s.
I know, and I didn't hear about
As
this.
early as the 90s, I already called myself a DINK. So, for the Gen Zs who think they came up with the term, nako, hindi. Dati pa yan.
Oo, totoo yan.
But as far as my personal journey, I was trying to look back to my childhood to see any early signs. So I'm the eldest daughter of, I have three younger siblings. So I was kind of a mini mom early
Mm-mm.
on. If you've ever heard of eldest daughter syndrome,
Nothing.
eldest child syndrome, eldest daughter syndrome. Usually the eldest daughter is the most responsible. They help the mom in, raising the younger children. So early on, I knew how to change a diaper, make the formula, really help my mom, who was a working mom,
Huh?
raise my younger siblings. Sometimes I would even, I remember as an adolescent, I would stand in for PTAs when my mom
Wow.
couldn't make it. So, ganon,
Yes.
ganon ka responsible. So, I was trying to look back to my childhood. I don't, the conditioning for girls to become mothers starts so early. Like, the minute they have a consciousness, we give them baby dolls, right? To mother,
Yes,
to
yes,
raise,
that's
feed,
true.
and bathe. So you know that scene in the Barbie movie of Greta Gerwig where the baby dolls were taken over by the career women Barbies.
Yes, yes, that's at the
So
beginning. Yes.
when I was trying to look back to my childhood, I don't recall any baby doll that I favorite. I don't see any baby dolls in any childhood photos. So I really wonder. And a memory I do have is that of my first day in high school. I was only 11 when
Yeah.
I entered high school. I went to a science high school called the Manila Science High School. Our last class on the first day of classes was home economics. And
Hmm.
I remember the first lesson was how to bathe a baby. There was a doll. I mean, teaching like, well, I was 11, but my classmates were
Hmm.
like 13, 14. Teaching all these girls to bathe a baby in a science high school. So I was like, what is this? Like, first of all, I already know that. Second of all, why are they teaching that? So 10 minutes into the
Yeah.
I heard that we actually had the option to choose between home economics and journalism. Like it was an elective. So I said,
Okay.
duh, no brainer. I was always a writer. I was, part of my grade school paper. So I stood up and said, guys, we can choose. Who wants to come with me to take economics instead? Who wants to join the school paper instead of bathing a baby? And they're like,
Right.
so I led like a whole mutiny of like, so that's my earliest memory, if you will. So maybe I don't know what it was. Maybe it was part of it was burnout because I was the eldest
Mhm.
daughter.
Fun.
And then maybe I thought maybe this thing is not for me. And
Okay.
additionally, growing up, I told Rose that my dad owns Book Sale, the bargain bookstore chain.
Yes, of course. I
So
love that. I would buy
Yes.
from
Book
thank
there.
you for
sale.
Yeah.
your support. So
Yeah.
early on, our living room was the warehouse because he was starting it in the early 80s. So I had access to a wide range of reading material. I had
Yeah.
exposure to all the women's magazines, so many books. At age
Mhm.
12, I was reading Miss Magazine, which is the feminist magazine founded by Gloria Steinem. I mean,
Of
I don't know if
course.
I
Yes.
understood what I was reading, but I guess I had early feminist makings. So
Okay.
reading about women achievers who held alternative lifestyles, like some achievers chose not to have children or chose not to get married. There were alternative life paths uh, in other parts of the world. So for me, I guess just knowing that there are ways to, there are lifestyles to aspire to instead of what you are familiar with in your own environment and in your own bubble, it was very liberating. So in my teenage years, I already knew kind of. In fact, when it came to for the high school yearbook, I think they said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I was
Oh.
so tempted to write, "Not a wife and not a mother." So yabang, di ba? But I didn't put that. I didn't put that. So I guess I had as really cognizant early on that we actually have a choice. So as early as maybe age 20, I knew I wanted to be childless by choice or child free as it's called now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what are your reasons? I mean, if you delve deeper, no? If you dig
Right, right,
deeper, what were
right,
your reasons for wanting to not have children?
right,
Beyond just, I mean, I'm sure you put a lot of thought into
right,
why.
right. I think maybe it's not like we ask girls actually what are your reasons for wanting to have children? Like
Mhm.
it's probably maybe a natural assumption that all women want to have children.
Mm-hmm.
But back
Mm-hmm.
then I just knowing that I had the choice made me decide early on, well, if I don't have to, why do I have to do it? There's so many things I want to do
Mm-hmm.
in my life. I don't want to use the word unencumbered because I don't want to. I mean, I really admire moms and I think they do a wonderful job in raising, good human beings. But if it was an optional choice, the way I chose journalism over home economics, if I don't have to, why do I have to? Maybe it was just my inclination. Like,
Yeah.
if I don't have to, why do I have to? So it
Yeah.
was
So I guess,
Preference.
yeah, I guess the takeaway here is we've lived all our lives, or generations of women have lived with the assumption that
right,
everybody wanted to be a mom,
right,
Yes.
right.
right? And so now that things are changing and people have the option, women are open in taking that option. We shouldn't even be asking why. I guess it's a reflection on how we've been conditioned through the
Correct.
years.
Correct.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
maybe if more people ask that, like, why do I want to have children? Maybe they can give it more thought. I'm not saying that there are parents who didn't think about it, but we do encounter, parents who probably just went with the flow. And, maybe often heard it said that they should teach parenting in school, actually, because it will be so helpful, right?
That's right.
But
But interestingly, you mentioned before that you are very maternal when it comes to
Yes.
the way you treat your staff, right?
Right, right,
About
right, right. So when they're saying, don't you have the maternal instinct? And I would say I do, but it doesn't have to come out in having a child. I realized looking
right,
back, I was in
right.
Summit Media for 25 years. Some of the people that I mentored and nurtured and trained have called my management style very maternal. Not in the
Mm-hmm.
sense of we're all a family here and all that, but I think my style was really more of
yeah.
and a nurturing way rather than leading with fear or tapping into people's fear. Sometimes I probably guiltily tap into guilt rather than fear. Like when I would see potential in somebody that was working under me, I would make it known to them that I know you can do better. I know your potential. And I know how far you can go. So I would push them to excel further than whatever limiting beliefs that they had. And I recall that it was more motivating to say, I'm so disappointed in you because you could have done better and you didn't, and now you have the chance to do better. So maybe that's where the maternal instinct came out.
Yeah.
My
That sounds very motherly, actually, the way you put it. How about, can you tell us any incident, probably pressure from family or friends about
oh
your may
yes,
mga kwento ba dyan na
it
nakaka
never stopped. I would be accosted by strangers.
really?
Well, of course, relatives wouldn't stop. My mother wouldn't stop. I remember the mom of a former boyfriend would give me baby shoes for Christmas.
What? Good.
What a hint.
More than a hint, diba?
More than a hint.
And then my mother wouldn't stop, relatives wouldn't stop, strangers would accost me because they knew my life, right? Because of my editor's letters. So it never stopped. But all throughout that pressure, I made a reel on Instagram about how I kept my composure
Mhm.
despite all these insensitive comments about why I didn't have children yet. I realized that I would just laugh them off. Like I really did not take offense because some people are really offended. So I think the reasons why I was able to keep my composure in my 30s and 40s when confronted with remarks about the decision to be child free was I had a strong sense of self awareness early on. I knew what I did and did not want out of life. And because I had embraced my authentic self, I was able to let go of the need for external validation. So whatever they would say did not affect me because I already made up my mind. And I knew that their opinions did not define me. Like if they'd say, that's abnormal, you're going to regret it, who's going to take care of you when you're older. I had
Oh,
all
that's a terrible
Oh
reason to
yeah,
have
that's
kids.
the usual.
That's terrible.
I would just laugh them off and realize that I could empathize with them because they weren't exposed to what I grew up exposed to. Like maybe in their bubbles, that was normal. They didn't know that there were alternative ways of living that were just as valid as their way of life. I couldn't force them to understand my views and decisions. So Yun, look, like when people would say, how come you don't have a mataray comeback to these comments? Parang for me, no need. Dami ko pang
Sayang ang effort, di ba?
sayang ang effort because there's no way naman to convince them. So there.
How did Andre come into your life? And because
Right.
you are married, and of course, he certainly has a say in such a
Yeah.
thing. I mean, was this a condition? Did you want to only date people who certainly didn't want to have children? How did he take
Right.
to it? If you can
Right.
share with us, great.
My past boyfriends were like, we were like-minded. So both did not want. With Andre, it helped that when I got married, I was already 42. Then he's younger by 5 years, so he's like 38. So parang medyo the biological clock was
Yeah.
passing, right? So we had similar views, and if ever there were moments where the views might have skewed more towards what if we have children or what if, we were always discussing, we were always keeping ourselves in check and making sure we were on the same page. And before we knew it, I was in my 50s now. So it's really important to find a like-minded partner if you know already. Although there are couples who have changed their minds, and it's okay to change your mind, but that would mean you will need to do like a renegotiation of sorts, because there are people who, I know people who already got married, and then when they realized one wanted children and one did not, ended in divorce. So it's better early on at the onset, really clarify your plans.
Mhm. Can you talk about, let's say, advantages naman of your choice that you didn't have children in terms
Right.
of your career and even your
Right.
personal life?
Right. While I do really admire moms who work, and even in the company where I came from, we had the highest regard for working moms because they did not waste a single minute of anyone's time. They had things to do, they worked fast. One advantage I can confidently name is I was able to throw myself 200% into my work. And because work was my passion, it
Mm-mm.
was not hard for me to do that. And so I was able to like really be fully present and pour all my energy into the work that I loved. So that's one advantage. Another time I remember in my mid 30s, a colleague of mine said, why don't you want children? I said, you know, my life in media, especially because I was handling an international title, I want to, at a moment's notice, if they say you have to fly off to South America, I want to like pack a bag and go and not think about anything else. And then
Right, right.
and then my colleague was just like bewildered, like, why would you want that?
Yeah. So, however, when it comes to, of course, again, the very traditional concept of legacy is that our children are our legacies. Now, talk to us about the legacy of dinks and sinks, because if you're single and you also opt not to have children, you are called a sink.
Oh, a sink.
Single
Oh,
income, no kids.
Okay.
I never thought of legacy in terms of humans that you leave behind. Rather than that, also when asked about how I define success for me, it's the lives that I impact and touch, and the people who learn, hopefully, from the messages that I put out there. I think that for me personally is my legacy. Like if I could only affect one person whose life changed for the better because of what I wrote, edited, what I said in the podcast, for me, that's also as important. It could maybe if I don't have a few children to name as my legacy, I can probably name a whole generation of readers, listeners who hopefully were impacted by the message that I put out there. So
Normally, those the individuals I know who've chosen not to have children or by circumstance couldn't have children, they
Right.
usually dote on their younger relatives,
Right,
like
right.
their nieces and nephews. Do you feel
Yeah.
that that has happened to you?
Yes, all the time. I'm always like a favorite tita.
Favorite tita.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
always a favorite tita that children of either well, I only have one sibling who has children, and maybe on
Mm-hmm.
the other side, on Andre's side, I also have a niece on the other side, and
Ah.
it's cool to be somebody that they can talk to about anything. And at the end of the day, I can return them to their parents without
Yes.
the responsibility of
That
being in charge
option
of their
was not
life.
available to us, Joanne.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
I do remember really enjoying being a tita and a ninang, especially. So,
Kanina. Mm-mm.
yeah, there is a kind of fulfillment that happens when you're a
But
cool tita or ninang.
what does the future hold for you as a couple, given that you are unhindered by these things? Do you find that you have many advantages that uh, couples who have children cannot enjoy?
We have a very fun and exciting and rich life. I would like to say we travel a lot. We can do as we please when we get home. I remember friends of ours who were recently empty nesters. Two of their kids were away at college abroad. And then they said
Mhm.
they found themselves for the first time in 20 years on a Saturday bewildered about what they would do on that Saturday. The first time they didn't have schedules for children, and they're like,
Yes.
what the hell are we going to do? And then they said, we're like Andre and Myrza. They can do whatever they want on a weekend. And
So
yeah,
they took it in a positive light.
yes, they said, oh my gosh, they couldn't believe their freedom. So I guess this is the kind of freedom that we have been enjoying in our life.
You know
That's
what,
good because
Mirza, when you were talking about that, I was saying that I had to wait a couple of decades also to get there because my husband and I, Marvin and I are already empty nesters and we're just really enjoying it as well.
And you
So
have a grandchild, so I'm sure it's even
yes.
more fun.
Yeah. So parang at home, since it's just the two of us, we can eat what we want, eat at what time we want, and the
Yeah.
alats are no longer there.
right, but on the other hand, I know of couples who regard their children as the glue that keeps them
Right,
together. And so
right.
unfortunately, when the children leave the nest, they find that they're living with strangers. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
So
And
right.
that
that's
that
another
becomes difficult.
podcast
Yeah,
episode.
yeah. But
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the
That's
good thing but in contrast to Mirza's life and Andre is they never had to deal with that. They never had to buffer anyone, right? They did never
Yeah,
had to delay the reckoning, right?
right.
They never had to delay the reckoning. The
Correct.
reckoning is always there.
I guess we don't need any glue because we're still we
Yes,
are. I
that's
think if
right.
you need a buffer and you have nothing to talk about when you're empty nesters, maybe their relationship needs attention also, as well as
correct.
Yes.
thinking. So maybe that's a clue or a flag about, hey, we gotta work on our relationship with each other as well.
Yes. In fact, that what comes to mind now is if you are parents with kids, you should actually hang out with dinks. So that you
Yes,
can already see examples of how the two of you should be really
right.
engaged with each other,
Right.
despite all the so many things that you have to contend with while raising your children.
And when we go out, sometimes our single friends will say, wow, you're the only older couple we know that still goes out.
Right, right. But
So,
do you feel that you have more in common than with your single friends? You
definitely,
probably do.
we have a lot of younger single friends, child-free fellow dinks. And actually, even for me, a lot of my friends are younger. Of course, I keep the old friends, but as their lifestyles diverge, like when they started to have children, I found myself suddenly no longer being invited to birthday parties. And I would say, hey, how come you're not inviting me na to the birthday parties of your children? They're like, you don't come naman eh. And then when you go there, nakatayo ka lang dun.
Nabibingit ka na, nabibingit ka sa
Parang
class.
hindi ka naman makarelate. I'm like, okay, makes sense. So I have a lot of Gen Z and millennial friends actually. So maybe they keep me young.
Now, I always think it's a very, very good idea to have friends who are 10, 20 years older than you, and at the same time, have friends who
I,
are 10, 20,
I
30
really
years
agree.
younger than you.
I agree. So that you expand your circle, your mind, your perspective, your
Oh, we have that at Zonta, Joanne.
Exactly. I know. I was
2
going to
decades
say,
up, 2 decades down.
right? Even 3 decades, diba? Three
Yeah,
Yeah.
decades, up and down.
it's a plug ba to join?
It's also good practice to, keep in the thick of things. Like there's nothing sadder than being out of touch and, you
Yes.
know, especially being proud about ano ba yung mga TikTok na yan. Kalokohan lang na yan, di ba? Sometimes it
Yeah.
might make you more prone to becoming a dinosaur if you're not
Correct.
aware of what's going on in the world. So it's good practice to have all kinds of ages as friends.
That's right.
But given that you don't have children, that you're not a parent, okay? Because I hear a lot of people say, it's when I became a parent that life changed for me. In your case, it's not that way. But how has life changed for you now that from the time that you were single and now you're married?
In what way?
Yeah, I mean, how did it change? Being married as to being single. Was there any difference? Some people could say something like, "Oh, now I have to think about my husband before making a decision."
Right,
Things like
right.
that.
I think we're pretty independent.
Okay.
Yes, we need to make mutual decisions. So, for example, when friends have to hurry, let's say we're out, and then my girlfriends have to hurry home because the husband has no food.
Yes,
Then they'll
exactly.
ask
Yeah.
me, "How about you? How come you're not hurrying home?" He's a grown man. He can order.
Oh,
It's not my
And
job.
he owns restaurants.
Yes,
yes.
which is where
That
we
helps
order from.
too.
Which is where we order from. And I guess our roles are not very traditional. Like, I can't for the life of me iron anything, but he grew up in the States, so he irons when I needed my iron. I call him my Iron Man, so he'll do that. And since he went to hotel school, he's really better in the kitchen than I ever will be. So, the division of labor is not very traditional.
Yan ang women empowerment talaga.
But sometimes I can feign ignorance when I shouldn't. Like, let's say something like a gadget is so hard to understand the manual. I'll feign ignorance and say, I can't understand the manual. Can you just take over? Which is not
And
very
you're an
feminist.
IT person, ha? Myrza, you're an IT person.
I know. Only when I'm lazy.
Yeah. So I do notice that there's a growing trend of
Right.
this option and being open about it. It's a legitimate option, something to be
Right.
respected. What advice can you give someone who is unsure whether they really want? Because the problem is the biological clock, especially for women like us, no? They
Right.
have to decide soon within the
Right.
first 2, 3 decades of their life.
Right. More than just a trend, the global statistics show that 1 out of 4 millennials and Gen Zs do not want to have children.
Wow, 25%?
Birth rates are declining, maybe because the number one reason is financial, because
Yes.
more and more expensive to they want to be financially free, and they want to choose the lifestyle that they want. So my advice would be to really be self-aware and take time to explore who you really are and what you want out of life. Self-awareness is always the first step in making any decision. Don't rush into a decision because you feel it's something you should do. Like these these societal timelines, you should be married by age X. Have
Right,
a job by
right.
age X. I mean, these are all man-made timetables, and no matter how people or society pressure you, make your own timetable. I mean, there's no shoulds and should nots. But then, if your biological clock is ticking, then be aware of that. And a lot of my girlfriends have harnessed science, so they freeze their eggs.
Yes.
It's super expensive, but like for the cost of one designer handbag, you could freeze your egg. So maybe
It's a good
about
investment.
think about such things so that you're not pressured to settle for a mate just because your clock is ticking, and you can make wiser choices. Because some people, I guess they're kind of, I wouldn't say bamboozled, but maybe hypnotized into like settling for an unsuitable mate just because they feel that their clock is ticking. So really, really take the time to decide and make sure that when you do find the right partner for you, be sure you're aligned in your decision, and remember that it's okay to change your mind later on.
Oh, fantastic words. Very, very good advice
Yeah,
for the
just be
younger
more
woman right now.
intentional about your life, because if we don't live life with intention, instead of living the life we want, life is gonna live you, and before you know it, parang, I got pregnant. Oh, I became a parent. Like, it shouldn't be an accident. You can plan it. You can actually plan it.
How about a message for those who remain to still be in that traditional point of view? What advice can you give them so that they do not really impose their own standard of what should be the life that a woman leads? What can you tell them?
You mean the titas who are nagging the
Yeah,
same?
every Christmas ano reunion, di ba? Oh,
I think we should, as a society, value all life choices equally. I mean, it's a time of diversity and respect for, lifestyle choices. People who don't want children should have the same respect and
yeah,
consideration as those who do. Hopefully, like even in the workplace, I remember, so the working moms, we had a very female-led management. So sometimes the working moms would say, okay, I have to leave work because it's the graduation of my child or whatever. And, they're given leeway to do that. And then kami namang mga single, paano naman kami? Dito na lang kami. Want to like pursue a passion or a hobby. Parang anak din yan, di ba? So maybe, we could think of that also. Maybe in the future, we could have also enjoy the same privileges. Maybe flexible work arrangements could go a long way also in supporting people who choose not to follow traditional paths.
Yes, that is wonderful advice. And it's about time. I
Yeah,
think Filipinas for many years, especially being a very Catholic country,
correct.
in a very macho society. I always say that despite having two female presidents, we still have a long way to go in gaining our
Very long way.
independence
Yeah.
as women and
Yeah.
to attain gender equality. We still have a long way to go.
Very long. We're the only country where divorce is not legal in the entire world.
Yes. I mean, apart from the Vatican, right? But
Yes.
we have a long way to go. And I guess that's why organizations like ours exist to be able to push the advocacy and make other women realize or females realize that we do have a right to gender equality.
Yes. Thank you for doing that and for keeping that message top of mind. Another thing I want to say is hopefully more people will realize that children should never be considered a retirement plan. I have heard
Yes.
exactly.
Yes. Yes.
Mag-aanak na ako para tumigil ako magtrabaho. I mean, they didn't ask to be born.
Correct, correct.
I wonder, is that a Filipino thing? Is that an Asian thing? I'm not sure.
It's
Is that a
very,
Latin thing?
it's very Asian, and the other nations who are maklik as a family
Right.
normally
Mm.
live with their parents pa rin, even after they've gotten married. So, because
Right.
that's the old way of living, di ba? We used to inherit the trade of our parents. So if your
Yes.
father was a farmer, most likely you would be a farmer. So it was really that mentality that, okay, it's your turn. I'm old now, I'm going to rest, it's your turn. But now it can't be done anymore because we choose different trades and we live in different parts of the world. So
Right.
you really cannot count on your children to be your investments, your retirement.
Coming from a financial person.
That's right.
Also not a guarantee. I mean, there are also people with children whose children not end up taking care of them. So it's not always a guarantee.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially in Western countries or first world countries where ironically the seniors have the bad end of the deal because they end up being shuttled into senior
Right, right,
facilities,
right, right,
right?
right.
Oh, can I ask you that question? What are the plans of the usual dinks when it comes
Right.
the sunset?
Yes.
Well, for those who remain child free, you really need to plan for your future, financially, especially. Talk to Miss Rose here. Be mindful of, you know, the way that you planned out your life. Plan for your financial future as well. Get sound investments, plan for your retirement, your health care. You have to, be as independent as you say you are, because with all that freedom also comes your responsibility for yourself and your well-being till the
Yeah.
day you die, literally.
Yeah. So somehow it also keeps you on your toes because you
Yes,
don't have children to count on when you
right.
get. So, can you say that dinks are actually more financially aware of their retirement?
I hope that they are. I'm sure they gave it some thought as well. I hope they did.
They should, ano? And actually, everybody should, whether you have children or not.
Right, right,
Rose,
right.
Rose, I have a question naman for you. Since
Oh.
you're into finance and all that, what does Philippine law have to say about estate planning with
Oh,
regards to dinks, right? Because who ends up being, I know this is a legal issue, but who ends up being the compulsory heirs?
Okay,
right.
if your parents are still alive, they are the number one. Pag ano, no?
Oh,
Okay.
So, meron yung sa taas, meron sa baba. So, since no kids, that would probably be your siblings and
oh,
then your nieces and nephews.
okay.
Unless you really state in your will where you want your money to go.
Right.
Ah, okay. So they have that freedom.
Everybody should have that freedom. Even if you have children, you can already state in your will that, let's say, for example, you believe in a certain cause, that a
Right,
percentage
right, right.
will
I
go to.
remember Helen Gurley Brown, the founder of Cosmo, did not have children. And
Hmm.
so she and her husband, David Brown, left their money, I think, to the Met in New York.
Oh,
Mm.
After, I guess, they apportioned all the, legal errors, they
Mm-mm.
left their money to their favorite cause.
So this has been a very fun conversation. We should all really open up to the different views, respect each other's choices, and be friends with people who have
Absolutely.
different perspectives from you, because you learn more, you become a better person by doing so.
Right. And a better parent if you decide to be one.
Exactly. Yeah, it's parang naging
That's right.
parent ka na talaga, no? Pinag-isipan mo talaga, yes, this is what I want. This is the path that I'm taking.
Yeah,
No,
because it's no longer an expectation, but a choice.
Yes.
yes, that's right. That's a very good way of putting it. It's not an expectation, it's a choice that you actively make. So
Yes.
this has been a very, very fun discussion. Any parting words from you, Myrza?
I guess I just want to say what I already said: live life with intention. You have the power to create your own destiny. And biology is not destiny. Just because we are capable of being mothers, and even if you are told you'd be a very good mother, doesn't mean you have to be one. Or you can be one if you choose to be one. I have nothing but the utmost respect for moms. Every time I'm so busy, I remember in Summit Media before, I'd be so super busy, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have time for this. I would just look at the working moms next to me and say, well, if they can do it with many children, so can I. So
Yeah,
respect for
that's
all the
true.
mothers of the world. Thank you for raising wonderful human beings and making the world a better place.
Yes, yes. So
That's great. So thank you so much. Thank you, Mirza and Rose. It has been a pleasure being with you in this episode. We
yeah,
look forward to future episodes wherein we can
correct.
have meaningful discussions for women and actually even men out there to understand what is going on in our hearts and our minds, and how other people truly think uncensored.
Mm.
Remember, ladies, every Filipina has a story to tell, and her story is her legacy.
That's right. And please do tell us what topics you'd like us to discuss so we can invite the guests for the next episodes. Thank you very much, Mirza, Joanne. Maraming salamat.
Thank you.
Much.